revisit that time when she felt a little better, and I said, what happened just after that? What squeezed that joy out of you? Even if it was a tiny bit of joy, a tiny bit of light, what squeezed that out of you? And then she told me, well, my husband in the morning wants coffee and before he goes to work, and he wants a kiss, and I don't want to do that for him, but I do it anyway. And I tell her then, well, what's happening in your body when you feel that you don't want to do it, but you do it anyway? So let me back up just a second to say that when I first met her and we started being curious about who we were, she said to me, I don't have a sense of self. She didn't know how to be herself in the world. So she was just trying to please everybody. Every now and again she would do something beautiful, like she was an artist and she was a pianist. As far as art goes, she could paint, and she could put branches and pieces of metal and leaves and make a collage of all those things. It was very unique and beautiful. And then she would feel a disconnection from that and be doubtful about the power of what she was doing and not feel even love for what she was doing. Even the piano, she could sit at the piano and play classical music beautifully. And if one day I saw her depressed, I would ask her to play the piano. And she would say, I don't feel it. I don't even know that that's me. She was disconnected from what she loved. So anyways, back to the experience of not wanting to give coffee to her husband in the morning or kissing him good day. Felt that in her body, and it was in her chest. And she started crying. Just like I asked you to feel, to remember an experience of trauma, and then feel everything about it. And I became quiet because she was in tears. And we were just the two of us, she felt safe. And I don't know how long it took, 2-3 minutes of just allowing her to be with her pain. And when I saw that that was subsiding, I asked her what happened. And she told me, I remembered what happened to me and my father. She was 3 years old. And she told me what it was. I don't remember now. And there was a sense of peace in her after that. And we didn't talk about that experience again. After that, we played. We went on a walk. We just did other things, no therapy. And the next day I get a call from her and she says, I said no to my husband for the first time in my life today. So we didn't do any cognitive psychotherapy, or behavioral psychotherapy. We didn't practice saying no to her husband. I just helped her reconnect with one of the sources, or the source, I can't tell. Who knows? It's infinite, right? One of the big sources of a moment in her life where she denied herself because of what happened between her and her father, and decided that whatever it was that she loved about herself was not okay. So even though in spurts of moments in her life she was able to be creative, at other moments she was completely disconnected from that process and didn't even recognize herself as being able to do that kind of work or wanting to even do it. It would come out of her spontaneously, kind of like a volcano explodes. That was her explosion when she was creative. But the beauty in that experiment to me was that it made me see that depression is activated by moments in life where we deny ourselves, but there's also a moment in life where we did the original denying. And that was one client. I can't really generalize for all depressions, but it was a powerful moment for this particular case where all of a sudden she wasn't scared of saying no, and she had discovered that she had a self. And all that, not by figuring out what it is about yourself that you want to know, or, you know, it wasn't talk therapy, it was just sensation oriented. Getting in touch with who you are, why you deny yourself in a way, but without asking that question. So the point I want to make with that is that trauma is directly linked to trying to protect it because it's so powerful and painful. We don't want to revisit it. And as we protect it, so we stop looking at it, we've also have a story about it that we've accepted as the truth. And it's no longer the trauma that's hurting, it's the story we have about it. And that story is wrong. In her case, she had decided, oh, I'm not okay because my dad doesn't like that part of me. And therefore she stopped trying to develop that part of her. She was denying that creative side of her that made her feel joyful and alive, that would burst out of her every now and again, but she didn't dare sharing it with the rest of the world, only with a very few friends, right? So trauma is not the real problem. It's what we do because of the trauma. It's the denying of ourselves that we do because of the trauma. That's really what's preventing us from feeling alive later in life. But we focus on the trauma instead of focusing on what it is that we've denied, the protection that we've built around it, right? So the real issue is not the trauma. The real issue is the fear we have about it. The real issue is how we've interpreted and how we've decided to organize our lives to keep not looking at it. So ways to rediscover who we really are has to do with stopping to be scared of this trauma or these trauma. We have to be courageous enough to look at it. The trauma itself, be it a rape, be it abuse, be it people around us that were there to protect us and are not acting as protectors, or because society takes them away from us, right? Like the Mexican dads that are illegal and are pulled away from their children and sent back to Mexico. That's trauma, right? It can be any kind of trauma. It's every individual has his or her own. But whatever it is, if we don't embrace it, if we don't love it, then the rest of our life is disconnected from who we really are, from our real purpose. Now I'm going to give you another hint. It is my belief that it is not an action from the outside world, at least not for the most part. It's not an action from anyone from the outside world or from a culture that hurts you. The pain is already there. All that the outside world does is help you remember that pain. The experience of mental health challenge, trauma, is like a lamppost that tells you where you're hurt and where you need to put some light and some love to become alive again. That's basically what it is. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's not something that should be stigmatized. It's not a personality disorder. It's hurt that's there because at some point you decided that, or we decided that there was something that was not okay about us, and we decided to protect it in some way and not look at it anymore. But the pain didn't come from what caused the remembering of the trauma. The trauma was already there before, in my experience. When I looked at my life and my own experience of childhood pain, I would look into, well, where was the beginning of this pain? And all I could find is the beginning of the awareness of it, but not the beginning of the pain. I ended up doing some past life therapy with a hypnotherapist because I couldn't find the beginning of something that was really painful to me. And what I remembered, whether past lives exist or not, it doesn't matter. The experience of it was powerful to me. What I remembered was that just before my spirit was going to go into my mom's belly, I was surrounded by other spirits that were so excited about me coming to this life. And they said, do you want us to come with you and support you? And I said, no, I'm going alone. So my experience as a child was, I was alone, even though I became the first of 5 kids in my family. Whenever I was crying and I was not hungry or dirty, my mom would put the music on, or my dad, Beethoven usually, really loud so they wouldn't hear me cry, thinking that that's what you should do to help a kid become independent. But I had chosen that. I wanted to come to this life alone. So it's easy to blame my parents for what they did. And they apologized to me later, saying to me, you know, we learned later that wasn't the right way to handle this. But I came with this pain of choosing to be disconnected. And now in this life, I'm realizing I don't want to be disconnected anymore. But that's where my healing comes from. I was an infant when my parents did that. They told me about it. I didn't know how much pain I felt because of it. It was I was disconnected from the pain itself. I just heard from my parents they did that. Until one day, I was doing a healing workshop, and they were teachers. And at some point, they asked for a volunteer and said, me. So they put me on the massage table. It's called the Rosen method. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It came from somebody who was a physical therapist and realized that if she put her hands on somebody, that she could feel if that area, the energy was flowing or not. My feet were completely cold, icy cold all the time. So I told her I want healing to my feet. They're so cold. So I lay down on a massage table, and I had a sheet over me. And she put her hands on my feet, and she said, can you feel the warmth in my hands? And I said, yes. And she said, can you let that energy inside your feet? And I couldn't. It's like my feet were dead energetically. So the work in Rosen is to put your hands in an area where your body can actually receive some of that energy. So she found that my lower back, the area of my coccyx, was that intermediate place in me where it was part alive and part not. And when she put her hands there, she says, can you let the energy in? And I said, yes. And immediately I went into that memory of my childhood. For the first time, I knew that my parents were right, and they behaved exactly like they said to me that they did. But this time I could hear the music, and I could feel my pain. My pain of not being acknowledged as a physical being, my pain of distance between me and my parents, and my strong desire for my body to be acknowledged. But at the same time, the music was beautiful. I never blamed Beethoven for the pain that I felt as a result of being distanced from my experience from my parents that way. I never felt angry at music. I always loved music. And in that moment, as an adult remembering that experience, I knew I had a choice. I could open up to the joy of listening to that music and feeling connected with the whole universe with the music. Or I could stay in and focus on the pain and the misery of not having my body acknowledged by my mom. And then the therapy ended. My feet never got cold again. Complete healing from my feet. Now, that doesn't mean I'm completely healed. Just like my friend, who we revisited her childhood and what happened between her and her dad, it was easier for her to get out of depression and to love her own creativity after that. But every now and again, she would go back into that depression again. There was stuff about that period of her life that still needed to be uncovered. And then the same thing with me. I know that in my relationship with how my body likes to be acknowledged, it's not completely healed yet. But my feet are never cold again, so there was a partial healing. And I know that that pain came from before my parents behaved the way that they did. And so if they didn't cause it, that trauma was not caused by my family. I had made a choice, and that's the experience that led to that choice. So when we help children get better, remember that the trauma that they went through is exactly what they need, how painful it is, but it's exactly what they need in order to remember who they are. So you stop looking at the trauma as a negative thing. You start looking at the trauma as a way back to their true selves. So your job as a therapist is to help them go through that process, to not be scared of the trauma, to find a way to release it, to find a way to forgive themselves and whoever was part of that traumatic experience, so they can be completely free in their lives to be who they want to be. And you can do that by breath work, by helping them not be scared of their body, by helping them dance, by helping them be free with their body, their creativity, and learn to trust some people. By your behavior with them, you create a relationship where they learn to trust somebody. And that's essential in letting go of the trauma, because part of the trauma says, I can't trust anybody. I don't know who to trust. Either the father is the rapist and the mother denies it, so both parties are in collusion in some way, even though one of them is not the perpetrator directly. Or whatever the trauma is, there are people around them that say, oh, don't worry about that. So they're denied. They don't have somebody that acknowledges them exactly as they are. And the trauma is part of who you are, not deep who you are, but your experience that helps you get to who you are. The best way to heal something is just to acknowledge it exactly as it is, or as it was, as you remember it, and not try to make it better first. Just let it be exactly how it feels inside of you. And as you do that, all of a sudden you feel acknowledged, and as you feel acknowledged, you're freer to not be scared of it, and as you let go of that fear, it can come back to the surface, and you can be more truly yourself. So our job is like a midwife, right? A midwife of something that's stuck inside of us, and allowing it to birth from that being. And we do that with love, with compassion, with our own acceptance of ourselves and the kid. And if we have done some of that birthing of our own pain ourselves, then we know how to help other people go through it. And so you don't have to know how to heal somebody or how to ask the right question. You just have to be completely present, like you said, and not afraid of the trauma that the kid went through. Doesn't matter how horrible it was. If they're still alive, there's still a chance for them to be free. And I think that's